It's no secret that I'm a huge FNAF fan. I think every editing joke I make involves Freddy Fazbear somehow by complete coincidence. I mean, I'm 22 now, but I was there for the first game. Then, every game after. I remember being 14 and excitedly telling my college-aged brothers every single theory I had, or even just ones I had heard online. I'm positive that they had no idea what I was talking about, but it was pretty nice of them to listen. They were too old and busy to care about the FNAF games when they were coming out, but they just knew it was important to me. I bet they never thought that information could possibly pay off. And yet, here we are. Basically, 2 months after the FNAF movie at the time of writing this. I was talking to one of my brothers about what he thought of the movie, and he started telling me about the FNAF movie theories he read and was asking what I thought of them. I have never felt more vindicated in my entire life. I told them they'd like it, and they do. I've been getting them to play the games with me little by little, and Pizzeria Simulator is a favorite not just of mine anymore. It's everything I've ever wanted. And it's got me thinking about the movie a lot. I know there was tons of discussion when it was playing about the reviewer score versus the audience scores, and I've never been less surprised that reviewers don't like something. Blumhouse, the movie's director Emma Tammy, and Scott Cawthon himself have made sure to let us know that this is a movie for the fans, above all else. And for the naysayers who called this a bad move, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is now one of the most successful Blumhouse movies ever made. It broke records, so shows what you know. But with these expectations built up, I wanted to make this video to discuss. Is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie a good FNAF movie? I'm not looking at this from any angle except what I feel is a lifetime of being a fan, and honestly, a student of the franchise. In preparation for this video, I made a list of questions to think about, then rewatched the movie and took way too many notes. I've seen the movie a couple of times already, so going in with a set list of questions to answer really made this watch through feel like the first time. I really enjoyed it. So before I go too in-depth about the movie, I want to lay out these questions just to simmer a little bit. What was important to the fans? What was important for the franchise? Did the movie help build up the games? And what did I want from this movie? When they announced this movie, I don't know, half my life ago, I was so excited, but I felt that excitement drain over time, admittedly. The less we heard about it, the more I thought it would never actually happen. I think most people just assumed it would be like a To Catch a Killer, suspenseful slasher horror. I always thought that this movie would end up being pretty tame. I mean, you're adapting Baby's first horror game. If it's super gory with crazy setups, it would feel detached. It'd feel like a different thing, because that's not where FNAF's horror lies. As time went on, we got little peeks into what development was like. Scott was pretty good about filling in gaps where he could. He told us when the movie moved to a different studio, and he shared a lot of rejected concepts that I, especially in hindsight, am glad we did not get. I wanted a Michael Afton story more than anything, so I feel like I really won here. It was cool seeing into what was actually going on behind the scenes. It made the movie feel attainable, and not like it was just some hypothetical thing we might one day get. Then the teasers came out. I think teasers and trailers are important for any FNAF-related thing. They've always held such an important role in theorist communities. That's not what I judge these off of, though, because for movies, obviously they have to show a little more, but it was hard not to look for any hidden clues we could find. And, you know, we did a little. The teasers for this movie are, in my opinion, actually pretty good. They left me excited, maybe a little confused as to what could possibly be happening when Mike is beating a man up in broad daylight, but all in all, I really enjoyed them. Especially the training video segments and the video that was just watching the cameras. I think those were really well done. Obviously, every look we got of the animatronics was amazing. I think they are far and away the best we could have ever hoped for this film. Going all practical effects was so smart, and it made them scarier. Those behind the scenes videos of the animatronics hanging out are better advertising than most films get today. This movie starts off by showing us the old security guard at the location being killed, and I thought this was a nice intro. In the games, there always seems to be remnants of the person before you. Just like Phone Guy dies first in FNAF 1, we know that the past security guards never have an easy job. There's a reason they needed a new one. Something I'd been curious about since the trailer, though, was the Saw-esque Freddy mask. I don't fully understand its purpose. It's like a more visually jarring way of signifying the bodies being stuffed into the suits, I think. But then, they show bodies in the suits later, so it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. It doesn't detract anything from the movie, though, besides just maybe being a little goofy. The mask is easy to set aside for me, though, when looking at the pizzeria. It genuinely looks amazing. It might be a little inaccurate to the games, but I think this design is way more dynamic for a movie than the game layout would have been. It looks the same in all the parts that matter. The credits are also very good. Like, the minigame style just suits them, and it's such a cool way to tie back to the games while not forcing it, since credits are meant to be visually appealing. And these stole the show while also pulling a couple of cool references for us. Something I enjoy a lot about this movie is the amount of Easter eggs hidden around the sets or alluded to through dialogue, even alluding to the idea of a theory, you know? The creators of this film know what the fanbase enjoys, and they provided. When Mike wakes up and you see that dream theory book on his nightstand, I lost my mind. I thought that was so funny. Then, we see Chica's magic rainbow and these puppet aprons, and I felt so cool for catching it. Even though of course I would, they're counting on me too. They know I spend way too much time thinking about this. Mike's obsession with dream theory is interesting too. I really love this characterization of Mike. He's tired, remorseful, overwhelmed, and ultimately trying his best to make things right, even though there's not really anything he can do to change the past. It feels true to Michael Afton in the games. One asshole brother move ruined his life, and he regrets it every day. I like that they tie dream theory into this character because it feels almost referential of the theory that you play as Michael Afton in FNAF 4. Speaking of Afton, let's talk about the biggest change from the games to the movie. Michael not being an Afton here. Though they do keep up the game's names by throwing Schmidt as his last name, I was pretty surprised by what they did with the families here. Mike, his sister, and his brother do fit pretty well for the Afton kids. I mean, Abby's name is just baby moved around, but they are shown to have completely different parents. A dead mom and a dad who is just ambiguously gone. I don't think this detracts from the story the movie is telling, but it was something to get used to, just from how long I've seen Michael Afton. I don't know if I'm looking too deep into things, but it's like many people say, Scott Cawthon doesn't do coincidences. I thought about this when Mike is at Abby's school, and the teacher talks about how much power pictures have. Immediately what comes to mind when I think of that are the hallway photos from FNAF 1. That's how he figured out everything in that game. The Easter egg pictures that had a small chance of even appearing basically told us what happened, kind of like how Abby had to use her drawings to tell the missing children what happened to them. I don't know if it's intentional or anything, but I just thought it was cool. I then spent way too much time looking at the chalkboard in the back of the class to try and see what those words meant. And they were pretty related. They're obviously talking about Liberty Chica here. The set dressing definitely did its job on me. As we get into the first night, it does make me happy to see that we have a phone call. I also thought it was funny that William is our phone guy here, like in Old Theory proposed. So I guess the movie universe has confirmed that Phone Guy is indeed Purple Guy. If there are any proponents of that theory watching this video, I guess now's the time to leave a comment on how correct you were. I'm sorry I didn't believe you in 2014. The stages still look fantastic, and the specific Easter eggs in the office are perfect. I cannot describe to you how desperately I want to see this red cup in real life. It looks whimsical to me for some reason. Of course, there's the original Celebrate poster back there. It's funny because I have this poster now, and I think we got the same one from Five Below. All the Fazbear merch is like actually attainable, which I think is cool. I mean, I have Mike's security badge too, Amazon, and this Bonnie plush, GameStop. I felt very... I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I felt like special when they showed them. This whole universe is just so familiar at this point, and I loved getting to experience that. This movie really was meant for me. It was meant for all of the longtime fans, and I guess it's because you don't see that too often. But while I was watching the movie in theaters, I felt like I had insider information. The references felt like inside jokes between the movie's makers and me. It was just very, very cool. I loved seeing Balloon Boy pop up like he did, but I was surprised to even see him in this movie. I guess it makes sense that there would be figures of him in universe since FNAF 2 is a prequel, but it shocked me. To me, the dream sequences felt like the mini-games in between nights. Every time Mike goes in his dream, things are slightly different at first, dialogue's off, and then, obviously, the missing children pop up in there, so that's familiar. It's also a good way to break up the monotony of the nights, just like in the games. Again, it might be looking too deeply into things, but that stuck out to me a lot on this last watch through I did. And after all of that, we are on to day 2, not even night yet. I'm sure I'm not alone in being surprised at how comically evil Aunt Jane is. I know she was needed to help set up some stakes for the movie, and her sending this crew of idiots over to the pizzeria is one of the ways we got to see just how powerful the animatronics are. But she is like evil, right? I want to know the dynamics of Mike's remaining family. Doug, however, does look like Scott 3D modeled him, so he was perfect. We can't discuss day 2 though without talking about MatPat.
You do realize that lunch is the most important meal of the day.
Thought it was breakfast.
Some people say that, but you know, it's just a theory.
Are you being paid by the word, or could we have a minute?
I was spoiled on this because TikTok users can't keep things to themselves, but it honestly didn't even ruin that moment for me. That is one of my favorite things a movie has ever done. MatPat has played such an important role for FNAF and its existence online, and to not have him in some way would have been such a loss. But that's just a theory, a #1 NES fan for life theory. Side note, but I love that not even MatPat's cameo has a throwaway name. It was again deliberately picked because of his Sans' NES theory. See? No coincidences. The scenes of Mike and Abby at home getting annoyed at each other in a way that only siblings do was very charming. I mentioned it earlier, but this really is just such a good characterization of Mike. You can see the love and care he has for his sister, but you can also see the annoyance in how out of depth he is, taking care of her. I think this really works well with Foxy Bro Mike from the games. In night 2, we get to see the camera angles more clearly from his desk, and it's awesome. I think this movie did a good job bringing those to life. I know we don't exactly see Mike flipping through them like we did in FNAF 1, but I didn't mind it so much since the cameras are still there. I think people that expected this movie to just be Josh Hutcherson playing FNAF 1 were off base. Of course, there's more things. There has to be. Some of the dumbest movie reviews I've ever seen were based on that idea. And I just don't think people realize how lame that would be. Mike's dream in night 2 is again different, and this time we get to see the classic black tears of the ghost child of Foxy. And I almost wonder if they chose Foxy because of Foxy Bro, but either way, it is a very cool shot, and one that I was really anticipating. Vanessa also pops up around here for the first time, and honestly, she is one of the more confusing parts of the movie. I think she was cast perfectly, but even when I had just seen the trailers, I had no idea what she was doing there. At this time in the movie though, that's okay, she's supposed to throw us off. It is interesting to see this character from Security Breach interacting with Mike, especially with some of the theories about that game. With Vanessa there, we finally get to see the first performance of these live-action Freddy's animatronics, and it is so cool. Talking in Your Sleep is a perfect song for this film. It describes Mike's situation so well, and it just makes me think about Mike's commitment to fixing what happened with Garrett. I just think this motivation falls perfectly in line with the games, like righting your wrongs and doing whatever you have to do. I think that's very cool. Now, it's day 3, And I don't actually hate the BreakIn plotline. I think it's mainly there to show the animatronics being scary, and I'm glad they were able to show that without killing Mike or Abby or something. I also like that we don't see the animatronics killing people explicitly. We never see that in the games. The closest we get are like 8-bit mini games. We never see it like in the nights, you know? The animatronics having these ambiguous abilities makes sense, and I think if they had shown explicitly how these guys kill, it would have looked a little silly. The suits are practical, and I'm not sure what kind of movement you could expect from them. This plotline also introduces us to this guy, who I know nothing about except he has the coolest shirt that I am actively seeking. This Midnight Motors shirt is awesome. He also is the reason that we finally get to see the FNAF 1 kitchen. I've always liked that the camera is down, but you could hear Chica in there, so seeing her like this is huge. I know some people don't like how the cupcake was so active, but I thought it was cool and a little bit funny, honestly. That cupcake has always been weird, but now he's scary with how fast he is. The cupcake in the movie moves in an interesting way as well, which makes me think of the theory that the cupcake is possessed by Susie's dog that William also killed, as shown in Freddy Maze. Overall, I enjoy the kills in this section. Freddy's is absolutely bonkers, and I felt like a shadow was the smart way to show that. It can suck, but at the end of the day, this franchise has never been so outright gory. I think they did a good job with the balance. Of all of the attacks by the animatronics, I think the one done the best though is Foxy. His scenes in this movie are awesome. The humming, running down the hall, and even the original jump scare sound are all there and better than ever. I want to explicitly point out the Employee of the Month board here too, as it's filled with FNAF YouTubers. I don't really watch much of FNAF YouTube, but this is just another way where I feel like the film honored the games and even YouTube as a platform for how important it was to FNAF's lifespan. To take the time to point them out shows the care and thought that I think went into this. There's tons of things like that all around the set, but I was so surprised to see the Sparky suit and Shadow Freddy here. That was crazy. At the diner earlier, I was like, oh, cool reference. But I didn't expect them to actually have the full suit there. It felt so nice to see this weird time in the FNAF theory community highlighted. Day 3 is the least interesting day, in my opinion. I think Vanessa popping up here is weird. Like the entire movie, I've just been wondering what kind of cop she is, because she's always just doing whatever. She gets mad at Mike for letting Freddy's be broken into, but it doesn't feel like a cop way. Which does track with Vanessa's character in the games and in this. She's a security guard for a reason. She's probably a cop to help William stay out of trouble, and I like that that implies that she's in on basically the whole business. All I know is that it's actually bonkers that she threw Mike's prescription in that water. An actual thought during that scene though, is that when Mike is telling Vanessa about his family, the way he describes it reminds me of Henry Emily and his family. In the books, Henry had a son too, but basically iced his wife and son out after what happened to Charlie. And with Abby's characterization, I wouldn't be surprised if she's a puppet-adjacent character. Honestly, Garrett either. Again, just a theory. In Night 3, Mike's dream is different again, in a way that still feels accurate to many games to me. I also like that Abby is friends with the animatronics. It's very cute to me that they don't initially trust Mike. I like the idea that they're going along with it for her. And I also like the next day that Abby knows they're ghosts. A child hanging out with her 5 ghost friends feels right at home in this universe. Night 4 is home to one of the more divisive scenes of the film, which is the fort building scene. I adore this scene. It might be my favorite of the movie. This is where I really felt that the team behind the film understood the franchise. They're kids getting to be kids, and it's nice to see after so many years of seeing them miserable. I think the FNAF games are equally funny and scary, and that's part of the reason why I love them so much. They're sad, yet goofy in ways that I feel only add charm, and that's exactly what this scene is. It's funny to see the animatronics move around. They have so much personality, and it's so sad to think that this is probably the only time these kids have gotten to play since they were killed. I love this. When Mike and Vanessa go to the storage in the back, I still felt confused by her, until I spotted the Ella Springlock suit and felt so smart that it overrode every other emotion. Plus, that was like the first time I've ever been able to visualize what a spring lock failure could look like. It's always been hard to conceptualize what that would do to a person, so I guess it's good to know that it would actually hurt really bad. Didn't know that before, I guess. I feel like this Vanessa and Mike talk is actually interesting. It feels like the first time we've really seen her for who she is this whole time. And that makes me like her more, even though she's being shady to Mike. But then, she threatened to shoot him with her cop gun. And I thought that was so crazy, I like her less again. Back to ground zero. She is definitely ambiguous. I also liked Abby saying this to Mike.
You look so angry. Why does everyone always look at you that way?
I feel like that captures the energy of Michael Afton perfectly. We are at last talking about day 5, and I do wish that Mike just explained himself a little better here. It's a classic problem with movies and TV shows. It's just have one conversation and the conflict is gone. So I get why they didn't have a conversation, but I just wish they did, because I'm so invested in their relationship. I like that after Abby marks him out of her drawings, though, the animatronics don't like him anymore. I think that sets a really cool tone that makes Night 5 feel like the hardest, because now the animatronics have nothing holding them back. And you can tell that from the dream that Mike has tonight. This dream is the bad ending of the game. He makes the wrong choice. But I will say, they tricked my man. He was feeling complex things and they took advantage. It's not Cassidy's nicest moment, but definitely not his meanest. When they are hurting Mike in his dream, I also thought it was cool that it was in character with the animatronics. At the pizzeria itself, I love that the bodies are being stuffed into suits in parts and service. This also shows how much of a hand Vanessa would have had to play in covering things up. She scoped out the scene after the break-in. You're telling me she just didn't look in there? No way. She at this point is officially a bad guy to me. Foxy is in the hall getting Mike, and again, it's interesting that there's so much Foxy confrontation for him. Foxy bro references go pretty hard, I think. When Golden Freddy popped up at Mike's house, I was just happy to see Aunt Jane gone, so that was pretty cool of him to do that. Even cooler is that we have yet another YouTube cameo by Corey X Kenshin, who I don't really watch, but I'm happy for him and his fans. I hope they felt as good as I did when I saw MatPat, because if they did, good day for them. And finally, we get to see the explanation of what exactly Vanessa is doing here. I know she's in a weird spot in this movie, but as someone that did really like Security Breach, I'm happy she's here. I felt like she was wasted a bit in the games, so maybe the movies can really do something with her. Her confliction about telling Mike what's going on, and at the same time being scared of what her father would do, is interesting. Especially having that confirmation about him being her father. The pizzeria, before all this goes down, still just looks amazing, but there's such a sinister feeling in the air when Abby gets there, and it's clear that this night isn't fun like the previous. Seeing her follow Chica down that hall was really eerie. Then seeing her almost get spring-locked was genuinely scary to me. I don't know. Maybe because Piper Rubio was so charming as Abby, but I was actually worried about her and Mike the whole time. Luckily, Mike is able to administer a controlled shock to try and survive, but when the cupcake was attacking him, I was, again, worried for him. That little thing's rabid. Same with Abby hiding from Foxy. The scene of her in the arcade and ball pit was nerve-wracking. And it's time, folks. William Afton is finally here in all of his Spring Bonnie glory. He looks terrifying. Like, gotta get that out of the way. It definitely helps that Matthew Lillard is a giant man, so Spring Bonnie just looms over you. He somehow looks bigger here than I could have imagined. Springtrap looks little to me. That's beside the point. I think they did a good job of making him look intimidating. I just think Matthew Lillard brought such a good energy to William Afton. This movie really has had perfect casting from day one. As a horror fan, I'm definitely biased, but the way that Spring Bonnie does the exact same knife wipe as Matthew Lillard's ghost face just made me so happy. I was surprised that he stabbed Vanessa, but I'm glad she didn't die. I would hate to see her be wasted again. The moment where the animatronics flip on William Afton is The scariest I think they've looked to me the whole time, which is funny because now they're officially focused on someone that deserves to die instead of Mike and Abby, but they were very intimidating to me. Even if they didn't get to have like the ultimate revenge against William and the cupcake win a little rabbit again, I didn't really mind that. I wish they got to do a little bit more, but at the end of the day, that's not what the animatronics are all about. They're not inherently evil or vengeful. I'm sure Cassidy has enough vengeance for everyone. I also thought the spring lock scene here was good, in, my opinion, obviously. Though I know a lot of people wanted something more explicit and bloody. I understand both camps, but I'm ultimately happiest with what we got. We saw everything we needed to, and even gotten
I always come back.
That didn't feel weird or forced. We just see him left there, twitching. And that was violent enough for me. I feel like this does such a good job of showing how miserable William Afton is when he becomes Springtrap. And then we see Cassidy close the door on him. A problem for another day. After all is said and done, at the end of this movie, we are met with the Living Tombstone's Five Nights at Freddy's, and this made me laugh so hard. I thought that was so funny. It was so perfect. They couldn't have picked a better song. It's also so funny that they clued them in years ago, and the Living Tombstone just couldn't announce it. They couldn't mention anything about it. I just think it's funny they planned that far ahead. And to finish off this Five Nights at Freddy's movie theater experience, they even put a secret message at the end of the credits. The energy in the theater was amazing as we all listened to that minigame voice read off the letters. It really was the perfect ending. Alright, that is every semi-relevant thought I had during the movie. So now that we're done, let's just look at these questions briefly again. And based on these, do I think that the FNAF movie was a good FNAF movie? Yes. I really think it was. I think they really did try to take stock of what the fans wanted to see while not leaning into it so heavily that the movie doesn't stand on its own. Because of this movie, I've seen people in my life become actual fans of the games too. It served as a nice introduction and still included so many deep cut references for fans. It's honestly a little impressive they managed to toe that line. When I was sat in the theater waiting for the movie to start, I took a moment to take in that this was really happening. I joked with my boyfriend that I had no expectations. At the very least, I bet it'd be funny. What can I say? I'm an optimist. But while we talked quietly amongst ourselves, I was somewhat plagued by the thought of, what if it's bad? And I'm so happy that that's not the review I'm making today. What I wanted from this movie was for it to feel like 2014 again. I wanted the excitement that I feel theory crafting. I wanted Mike to be done right. I wanted to go home and obsess over the details all night. I wanted to feel the way I felt when Five Nights at Freddy's came out. Maybe I'm too biased to make this video. I'm not blind to it, but I just felt the need to share my thoughts and findings. I found that despite the arguments over the current state of FNAF, I love this franchise more than ever. I guess at the end of the day, I just want to put my energy into something I really care about. I don't understand it, but I might have cried a little bit writing this outro. Second time I've cried writing a video. Totally the same energy across both. But it makes me excited to make the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this, like it, subscribe if you subscribe. I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to just show you some FNAF drawings I've made on the end screen. So if you like them, thanks. Bye.